So today we're going to look at fractions and decimals, specifically how we can change back and forth between them because both of them can be used to express numbers that are not whole numbers. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to start with changing decimals to fractions. Now, that's really pretty easy. Before you even start, the only thing you really need to do is read the number. And there's a trick for doing that. I'll go over that in just a minute. And then write the fraction you hear and reduce it. So for example, 28, the first one is 28 hundredths. And the trick, if you remember, is put a 1 under the decimal and a 0 under each place after, and that gives you your place value word. So 28 hundredths, it also, if you put a line there, it gives you your fraction. So we read it 28 hundredths, we write it as the fraction 28 hundredths, and then we reduce or simplify it. So both 100 and 28 can be divided by 4, which is going to give us 7/25. So 28 hundredths is equal to 7/25. Let's look at another example. The next one is 5 and 26 hundredths, and if we look at that, we've read it out loud, we're going to write it, and this one's going to be a mixed number, 5 and 26 hundredths. So having the whole number in front doesn't really change our process at all. And we still need to simplify. Those can both be divided by 2. That's going to give us 5 and 13/50ths. And then last but not least, we will read this one as 2 and 125 thousandths. As you can see, the hardest part of this is really the reducing part of it. Most students pick up on the fact that you can divide both 125 and 1,000 by 5. So that's going to give us 2 and 25 200ths. And then hopefully we'll pick up on the fact that we can divide both of those by 25 to give us 2 and 1/8. And again, the hardest part really about that is simplifying the fractions. So try these on your own. Pause while you do that, and when you're done, hit play and see if you have them correct. All right, so your first one, you should have gotten 24 hundredths, which simplifies to 6/25. For the second one, 6 and 4 thousandths, which simplifies to 6 and 1/250th. For the next one, 7 and 65 hundredths should simplify to 7 and 13/20ths. And then last but not least, 56 hundredths simplifies to, let's see, 14/25. All right, so that's pretty easy. Now let's look at what if instead of having the decimal and wanting to change it to a fraction or a mixed number, we have the fraction or mixed number and we want to make that a decimal. So let's look at that. There's two ways that we can look at that. The first way is to make it a fraction, make it an equivalent fraction that has either 10 or 100 or 1,000 as a denominator. And the reason we're doing that is because tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000, so forth and so on, those are our decimal place values. So if we can make it have that denominator, it's really easy. So our first one is 2/5. And when we look at that, can we make it have a denominator of 10? Yeah, we can. And the way we make it have a denominator of 10 is 5 times 2 is 10, so we have to do the same thing to the numerator. 2 times 2 is 4. So we end up with the fraction 4/10, which is also the decimal 4/10. Looking at another example, 4 and 7/25. When we look at that one, can we multiply 25 by anything to get 100? No. Or to get 10? No. But we can multiply it by something to get a 100. We can do 25 times 4 to get 100 and 7 times 4, which is going to give us 4 and 28 hundredths. And we can then change that to a decimal, 4 and 28 hundredths. Try these, see what you get. When you're pause while you're doing it, hit play when you're done, and see if you've gotten them correct. All right, so the first one, we can multiply both numerator and denominator by 4, and we're going to get 12 hundredths, the fraction, which is 12 hundredths, the decimal. For the second one, we're going to keep the 2 And we're going to multiply both 3 and 4 by 25, and that's going to give us 2 and 75 hundredths, which is 2 and 75 hundredths. Now, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to throw one more example in there because this is one that's commonly missed. Something like this. Let's say I had, for example, let's do 1/25. So if I multiply both of those by 4, I'm going to get 4 hundredths. The really common mistake is to do this, but if you look at that, that doesn't say 4 hundredths, it says 4 tenths. So make sure when you make this a decimal that you make it the correct decimal. So this one says 4 hundredths, and I can double check using my tip about putting the 1 under the decimal and a 0 under each place after. It does in fact say 4 hundredths. Now, method 1 is fabulous. However, it doesn't always work because not all denominators are factors of 10 or 100 or 1,000, so forth and so on. So we have to have a second method. And that method is to divide. Remember, a fraction really is a division anyway, so we need to divide the numerator, which is the top number, by the denominator, which is the bottom. And when we do that, we need to copy the whole number if there is one, and we might have to use bar notation. So let's look at an example. Now, 4/5 we could have used method 1, but I just want to show you an easy example. 4 divided by 5. Remember, the top number goes inside the house. If we put the 5 inside the house, we would get a number greater than 1, and that doesn't make sense because 4/5 is a proper fraction. It has to be less than 1. I'm going to need to annex and bring up a decimal, and then annex a 0. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And I have solved that problem. That one was easy. All right, the next one, 5 3/8. Go ahead and copy the 5 so that you don't forget to do it. And then 3 divided by 8. Pause while you try it and then check and see if you've gotten it correct. All right, so I'm going to bring up my decimal and then annex a 0. And 8 goes into 33 times. And as I work this one out, I'm going to get 375 thousandths, and it has worked out evenly. So I'm going to get 5 and 375 thousandths, because all I'm going to do is copy that part that I got for the decimal and put that after the whole number 5 that I already had. Now, sometimes we have ones where it doesn't work out quite so easily. 4/11ths, when I work that out, notice what's going to happen here. So I start my division, and if you've been kind of following along, or if you tried it yourself first, you're going to notice something starting to happen here. Hopefully you're going to notice that we have a pattern. And the pattern that you should see is we're going to continue doing 40 minus 33, then 70 minus 66. 40 minus 33, and this would end up being another 70 minus 66. So what that means is I'm going to continue to have a pattern that's going to repeat 3, 6, 3, 6, 3, 6, so forth and so on, and it would never stop. And we show that with bar notation. And it's going to look like a bar over both the 3 and the 6. We could also do it with a bar over, we could do it this way and have it over all of that, or we could do it this way. But this first one is probably the best way. What we can't do, and what people sometimes will do by accident, is this. And that's wrong because that would mean this. And that's not what we mean. All right, let's look at one more. So our last one, 1 5/6. If we work that one out, 5 divided by 6, we're going to get we're going to start to see, rather, that we're going to get a pattern. And we're going to see it right here, where it's going to repeat. And so notice this time we have one problem that's repeating. That means that there's going to be one number in our quotient that's repeating. So it's the 3 that's repeating, so we're going to write this. Don't forget to keep your whole number. 1 and 83 hundredths, and the bar only goes over the 3 because that's the only part that's repeating. Now, one more quick note, some common fractions and decimals. You may want to take a moment to just pause and jot those down. Those are ones really you should know and not have to work out. And then one further note, let's say that you're asked to compare fractions and decimals and they're all mixed up. To do that, you really have to make them all have the same form, and then you can compare. For example, if I want to put 75 hundredths, 7/10, and 1/7 in order from least to greatest, the first thing I would do is I would say, well, I know 1/7 comes first because it's the only one less than 1/2. And then I just need to compare 75 hundredths and 7/10. Now, I'm going to change the 7/10 to a decimal because that's the easiest one to change. I could have changed the 75 hundredths to a fraction and compared them that way. But when I look at this, remember to annex a 0 to be able to compare easily. 75 hundredths versus 70 hundredths. My next one is going to be the 7/10 and then the 75 hundredths. One more example. If I have 8/10, 5/6, and 75 hundredths, and I want to put those in order from least to greatest, or from greatest to least rather, I know that 8/10 is greater than 75 hundredths. So I know I'm going to put 8/10 before I put 75 hundredths. Now I just need to know, am I going to put 5/6 before both of them, between them, or after the 75 hundredths? So I can work out the value of 5/6, and when I do that, I'm going to get that it's going to actually be greater than both of them, because I'm going to get a repeating decimal, and it's definitely greater than 8/10 because 8/10 would be followed by zeros. This one is going to be a repeating decimal with 83 hundredths. So what that means is if I'm going to go least to greatest, I'm going to put 5/6 first, or greatest to least rather. 5/6 will be first, and then 8/10, and then 75 hundredths. Again, the key is you can compare them to 1/2, but then you also need to make them all the same form if you need to for the ones you need to, and then compare.